Okay, so what am I doing today? Today I am doing a little book discussion about a Tereksa Torres pulp novel that I picked up and read over my Christmas vacation called Not Yet. And I'm also sitting here on this beautiful sunny Saturday morning and drinking a Hockley Amber Ale, craft beer out of Orangeville, Ontario that I picked up at the grocery store down the street from me last night, and I'm trying for the first time and am quite liking. But the main focus of this video is indeed this novel. Now, I nearly screamed aloud in the bookshop when I was browsing the horror section and looked to my right and saw this old book rack in this used bookstore that I was in, and spotted a bunch of pulpy looking paperbacks, walked over and saw the name Tereksa Torres. Now, Tereksa Torres is the author of the classic lesbian pulp novel Women's Barracks. And although this novel isn't overtly a lesbian pulp novel, it does have those themes emerging because the main character Sophie, does indeed appear to be bisexual, and she has desires for women, although she doesn't act on them in this novel. But this one was published in 1957 after Women's Barracks, which was published in 1950. But this one is, I think, the more entertaining novel of the two. I certainly enjoyed it a lot more. I think it ended up being a 4 or 5 star read for me, whereas Women's Barracks was more of a 3-star read. Now, if you're new to the term pulp novel, maybe I'll give a brief explanation. So pulp novels, the term was derived from an earlier kind of genre of writing called pulp magazines. And pulp magazines published kind of these throwaway, sensational stories for mass readership, and they were often printed on cheap, inexpensive paper made from wood pulp. And when the pulp novels emerged, they were also of a similar story, kind of sensational, kind of scandalous per se, and they were printed on very cheap paper in these paperback formats. When I purchased this, it was actually wrapped in plastic, and I've been storing it that way, except when I've been reading it and when I pulled it out now. And I also chose, which is unusual for me, not to write in this, not to make any notes, just because I was so thrilled to come across this beautiful vintage 1957 paperback. And the cover, as a lot of pulp novels often are, doesn't really reflect what's in the novel. We have this half-clad woman here with a bit of breast poking out in a very seductive way. She does appear to be a young girl, a young woman, and the idea of this cover would be that it would kind of grab your attention in the bookshop, perhaps if you're purchasing it while you're picking up groceries or in the drugstore or something, and you would see this and perhaps pick it up thinking you're getting a very scandalous, sexualized story. Now, Not Yet is a story about a young woman coming of age in World War II France. She is attending a convent school. The novel opens when she's 16, but in some ways she seems to behave as younger than 16, but also older than 16. She's in that in-between phase, and perhaps the author's recollections of what it's like to be 16 are incorporated in this novel. But she's also joined by 3 of her friends, Simone, Isabel, and Antoinette, who all run into coming-of-age problems of their own. Apart from being a coming-of-age story, it's also a very empowering story. It borders on romance for a quick minute, but it's not really a romance novel, because this is really about Sophie discovering herself, discovering what she wants from life, and exploring in her own mind the concept of love. What is love? She really struggles with that, but she she makes a very empowering decision to wait, which is why not yet. It's not her time yet to marry, as her friend Antoinette does, I believe, by the end of the novel. I think she's the one who marries. It's not her time to jump into bed with a man, as her friend Simone does. It's not her time to become infatuated with an older man and entangled with an older man in his 50s, as her friend Isabel does. Instead, it's her time to grow into a complete adult woman and to face the challenges that come with everyday life. Namely, when we get to the end of this novel, the invasion of Paris by the Germans. It actually closes just as the nuns that she grew so close to at the convent are fleeing Paris to escape this coming invasion. She sees the tanks and the troops rolling in, and she herself is handed the keys to the convent and essentially given informal guardianship of this space. The women who taught her, who raised her in a sense, are recognizing the fact that she is now a mature adult, and whether she's entirely there or not, she is about to face these challenges, and they are putting a sense of trust in her. And I really love that about this novel, that it wasn't so much about sex as the moment when she came of age, but rather about her own experiences and her own development and her own mental maturity, so to speak. She does have a couple of love interests in this novel that do come out of it. One of them is the brother of one of her friends, and she is a little bit interested in him. She dances with him at one point. But ultimately, she decides that despite his offer of marriage, she's not going to take that. She gets two offers just as the novel is coming to an end. And one of them will actually take her out of France, take her to America, to a safe place. This man arrives with false papers for her, saying, "I'm here to rescue you." And she says, "No thanks, I like you, but I'm not in love with you. I'd rather take my chances here. This is where I belong. I'm not going to marry just for the sake of marrying, for the sake of my safety." And so in that ways, it was a very surprising ending, especially for the 1950s, because in a lot of the 1950s romances, a lot of the 1950s pulp novels, that happy ending comes when the protagonist falls in love. So as I said at the start, this could be considered a lesbian pulp novel, or it could not. You definitely get the sense that Sophie is perhaps bisexual. We know that she has an interest towards men and an interest towards women. She is sort of in love. She adores one of the young nuns who has come to teach at her convent school. And she has some, I guess I would call, a couple of sensual scenes with her. She's very looking to please her. It's more of a schoolgirl crush than anything else. But she also has an attraction towards her father's mistress, Vera, and we get one very kind of smoldering scene where she considers kissing Vera, and Vera recognizes that and puts a stop to it. I found both of those scenes. There's one where the nun is being very kind to Sophie and stroking her hair, and we're not quite sure whether the nun is actually attracted to Sophie or whether she's treating her as just, a little girl that she's comforting and giving advice and guidance to. Sophie definitely seems to see herself as a little girl in the eyes of this older nun. But Sophie is also kind of exhibiting, I'm going to call them symptoms of attraction towards this nun. In fact, she even considers taking the veil just to kind of please this woman that she wants to impress so much. but ultimately she decides not to. I want to read for you the passage where she is kind of interacting with Vera. Vera has found her kind of wandering the streets very late at night, and she's wondering what Sophie is doing out there. She was being essentially attacked by some young men who were interested in her. And Vera kind of swoops in and saves the day with her current date, Tony. Sophie is a little bit confused as to why Vera is dating Tony when Vera is also dating her father. There's kind of an interesting dynamic there where Sophie's mother is kind of tolerating and almost friends with Vera in a sense, and isn't really too jealous or outraged because she has the assumption that her husband will always stay with her. And so Vera occupies kind of an interesting and undetermined role within the life of Sophie. But Sophie finds herself alone with Vera. Let's see, where am I at on this page? So she's looking at Vera, and she's noticing things, perhaps for the first time here. We haven't really had her talk much about Vera, apart from the fact that she's beautiful and elegant and everything, that she sort of wants to be in a part of herself. She says about Vera, her throat was white, her shoulders were beautiful, her red hair smelled so good. She was altogether perfumed. I understood that Andre, she refers to her own father as Andre, which is a little bit odd. I understood that Andre could be so attracted to her. I understood that he would want to caress her endlessly. One could not dance with her without a desire to caress her. When I looked at her mouth and understood that one could not look at her lips without wanting to kiss her, I turned my head away. My face became somber. She said to me, "What's the matter, Sophie? Are you unhappy? Look at me, Sophie. Yes, you have your father's eyes. You're going far in life, you know. You're a strange little young woman. Everything is still asleep in you. But on the day you come awake..." I looked at her. Yes, it was true. I was the one true thing that was the one true thing that anyone had said to me. Everything was still asleep in me. I was 16, and what I was going to become was there inside me, sheltered, but ready to emerge and to make me a little girl, no longer, but a woman. A woman. The gladness of becoming a woman filled me entirely. I did not even know what it meant, but I was happy that this was what I would become. Vera pressed me against her gently. She passed her hand through my hair. "Sophie," she said, "in 10 years you'll be absolutely astonishing. Love will pour out of you. Sophie, you are made for love." I had not stopped looking at her. Her eyes were on my parted lips. I was pale. She said to me, "No, Sophie, not now, not yet." And she placed her finger on my burning mouth as she drew back her body slightly from mine. "Now, Sophie," she said, "is still the time of waiting." Just at that moment, Joe came towards me. And so she has this very intimate scene with her father's mistress that really encapsulates, I think, some of the challenges that Sophie herself is going to be facing in the future as she continues to grow up, because obviously she is attracted to women, and it is the 1950s, and not only is she facing this war, she's also facing an internal dilemma of sorts. So you can tell that I really did enjoy this novel, and I'm flinging it all about, and I shouldn't be doing that. I should be showing you the cover. I really did enjoy this novel, and I'm not sure how accessible it is to find. I don't think it's in print any longer, but if you are able to find yourself a vintage paperback edition like I did, I hope that you really, really enjoy it, because it is probably the best novel I've read in 2019 so far.